A conservation project incepted in 1987, an idea born out of South African minds. And now, 20 years later, we're able to see the fruits of their selective breeding labor by bringing an animal back from extinction.
She's traveling through the wild. She's searching for the truth. True nature's child. She's gonna find the proof. Picking up the trail. She's gonna find the answers. She's gonna tell the tale. She's gonna tell the tale. Keep it wild. Keep it free. This could be our last chance to see.
Beautiful Cape Town isn't known for its claim, but Wild Limited's taking a short drive out of the city, where a remarkable project is bringing a subspecies back to life. The last captive quagga died in 1883 in an Amsterdam zoo. Who knew she was the last of her kind? Quagga were ruthlessly hunted by South African colonists who saw the wild animals as food competitors for their livestock. Ultimately, they were shot to extinction. But today there's a place where we can see quagga again in a selective rebreeding program that's history in the making. Despite sophisticated manipulations, extinction is still forever. When we lose a species from the face of the earth, it is irreversible. However, in the case of the extinct quagga, the quagga was not a species on its own. It was a subspecies of the plains zebra, of which there are 3 species of zebra on the planet. The word subspecies has made the world of difference, and in the quagga's case, extinction has not been forever. There's been much scientific debate whether the quagga was a separate zebra species or not, an argument only recently settled. Enter the University of Cape Town's retired Professor Eric Harley, an expert in conservation genetics. Prof, can we establish what a subspecies is versus a species? Because it can get quite complicated.
A species, or 2 different species, are 2 animals which, even if they look a little bit alike, cannot interbreed to produce fertile, fit offspring. Subspecies are merely varieties, but which can interbreed perfectly well, producing perfectly fit, strong offspring, and those be considered subspecies.
A subspecies is a genetically and geographically distinct subunit of a species, and there are 3 species of zebra. The East African Grevy's zebra is the largest, often seen in Kenya. The white stripes are narrow and set very close together. The Cape Mountain zebra has a white belly with a single stripe along the middle. And also, it has a distinctive dewlap under its neck. The plain zebra or Burchell zebra is the most common, with its home in southern and South Africa. The plain zebra is the most similar to quagga, and thus they're the key to rebreeding quagga. If you're talking about breeding an animal back from extinction, what are the most important elements that you are needing from your perspective?
The important thing is that we are not creating a new species or anything like that. That's very important to understand. You can't bring an animal back from extinction. The point about the DNA aspect is that some DNA was taken from one of the original museum specimens for quagga, the one in the Cape Town Museum. And a clever chap in the States by the name of Russell Higuchi managed to get some DNA out of this quagga, and he showed that the sequence of that DNA was identical to the common plain zebra.
DNA molecules contain the animal's family history, in which the 4 bases are arranged in a ladder-like order. This arrangement determines the end genetic result.
It's important to make the point that the whole project has nothing to do with genetic engineering or genetic manipulation or anything like that. It's purely a selective breeding program. The only place where the DNA came into it was in the beginning, in showing that the quagga was a plain zebra.
This remarkable project came about thanks to a taxidermist who had the interest to collect the quagga tissue samples. His name, Reinald Rao. When Reinald Rao came very first time with the concept, what was your reaction?
I think you could say enthusiasm. And The idea of a selective breeding program to try and bring back an animal which was thought to be extinct was intriguing.
In 1969, Reinhold Ra remounted a quagga foal at the South African Museum and collected some of its dried skin. These samples, along with additional tissue samples he collected from museums abroad, were DNA analysed. The results? The quagga was simply a southern population of the plain zebra, a subspecies genetically almost identical, but with different coloration. It's incredible that something as small as checking the genetic material could have such a profound impact. So from this foal, we have the regeneration of a species that we carelessly... The formation herd of plain zebra was sourced from Namibia and KwaZulu-Natal. Selection was based on the least stripes. The project is the simple selective breeding of plain zebra with the most quagga-like characteristics over several generations.
We're slightly modifying Mother Nature in that we're selecting animals from the first generation and then from the second generation, and now we're into our third generation. We're selecting the most quagga-like animals, those with the most reduction of the striping, and hang on and breed with the ones which have the reduction in striping. In other words, which are veering towards the quagga phenotype, as we call it, or quagga appearance.
Professor, in order to track the progress from generation to generation as these quagga are losing their stripes, you've come up with something called scoring. Talk us through the process, please.
Yes, we divide the animal into 5 areas: the head, the fore part of the rear part of the body, and the legs. And then we count the stripes in those areas. The important areas are the hind body and the legs, because that's where the quagga shows its real major reduction in striping. We count only stripes which go more than halfway around the body, only those which are complete, and we avoid shadow stripes. These are those fainter stripes which you see in between. So in the hind part of the body, you count 1, 2, and that's all there are. In the legs, you can just see 1 or 2 stripes there. We count any stripes which we can see in the legs. So I'd probably count 2 there and none in the foreleg.
So this animal is actually quite far down the line. This is a good example then.
It's a very good example because if you look at the average plain zebra, it's got about 20 stripes down each leg and usually about 5 stripes on the rear part of the body.
Thank you, Prof. Harley. But now it's time for us to see these quagga in the flesh. So join Wild Limited after the break.
She's searching for the truth.
The Elandsberg Nature Reserve, just a short drive from Cape Town, is home to the Quagga Project. This area is filled with magical biodiversity and was the original playing fields of the quagga. With a policy of minimal interference, the game roam the plains as they used to. One of the latest births is Henry, the most visually similar to a quagga. The formation animals, Alan and Lulu and Alex and Melanie, gave birth to Sean as well as Luke. Little Henry is a maternal 3rd generation and paternal 2nd generation. His stripes only start at the base of his neck. From small beginnings with 10 animals at Elandsberg, Reserve is now home to 22 quaggas, running free and breeding. The newest foal is young Reinhold, named after the project's founder. Bernard, are you proud to have quagga on this land?
Yes, it's great that finally, after 20 years of selective breeding, we can actually see a difference in their coloration. And we're actually finally getting back to the quagga.
Are the quagga a major tourism draw card?
Yes, there's a lot of interest, especially from overseas tourists in the quagga. We've had groups that have come out specifically just to see the quaggas in their natural habitat.
The project draws visitors from around the globe, yet many South Africans have never heard of it. This is pioneering work right on our doorstep that's changing the science of nature.
What do you personally think of Reinhold Ra?
I've got a lot of respect for Reinhold Ra. He had No one believed him, and he then went out and proved his idea and showed everyone wrong.
What we're looking at, quaggas grazing the plains, is pretty much exactly what our forefathers saw in the past, all thanks to Reinhold Rau and his crazy, simple idea of reviving a species. The view that we're looking at here is something that people saw over 100 years ago.
Yes, and we're very lucky to have such a large area of land that we can put into conservation and keep it in its natural habitat here.
Elandsberg Nature Reserve is doing phenomenal work in bringing rare species back from the brink. Focusing on natural diversity, the reserve has also revitalized Cape Mountain zebra and bontebok populations. Bontebok were once considered to be the most scarce antelope in the world. That's amazing. So it's the bontebok, it's the Cape Mountain zebra. I mean, all these species are critical.
Yeah,
You know?
critical importance, yeah. We almost lost all of them.
The three zebra species, as we know them, have also had their fair share of ups and downs. The Cape Mountain zebra, which is found in the Western Cape and into the Eastern Cape, has experienced a radical decrease in numbers due to hunting, due to habitat loss. Bernard, how did those numbers then recover?
Through very careful breeding of the animals in both the Mountain Zebra National Park and down in the Cape Nature Reserves. Very slowly, the populations were increased.
Biodiversity is critical and includes fauna and flora, as well as the sustaining soil. We're killing our planet, but we do have the knowledge to conserve. We can't reverse extinction, but we can save what is... Bernard, this flower is representative of rhinoceros, of which there's only, what, 2% left in the world?
Yes, the rest of the rhinoceros has all been ploughed up and turned into wheat fields, and we've only got this tiny little area left.
The reserve is a mix of fynbos and rhinoceros. How does this benefit the quaggas, the zebras?
We have a wide range of habitats, so they can select if they want to be down in the grasslands in the springtime for the young sprouts. They can go down there, and then in summertime when it gets dry, they tend to move uphill and follow the water as it dries up.
Elandsberg is a sanctuary of biodiversity. Through conserving endemic plant species and the rebreeding of threatened species in quagga, the reserve is making a real difference to natural diversity.
It's been a long road, but yes, it's great to start in the bush again.
The Quagga project was officially recognized in 2000 when it signed a cooperation agreement with SANParks. Quagga project animals are now being translocated into appropriate national parks. One of the people who remembers the start of the project was Jan Cullis. Meneer Cullis, jy was hier op die plaas toe die quaggas hier aangekom het.
Ja,
Vertel ons daarvan.
ons het hier afgelei, hier onder kan die dam. Uit die terboks uit. Toe lei ons elke een met sy vrou en met sy baby af. Toe elke een in sy kampie. En ek het vir hulle elke oggend gaan kos gee en in die aand gaan kos gee.
En nou, toe jy die quagga vir die eerste keer gesien, wat het jy gedink?
Ek het gedacht was 'n donkie. Ek nou eerste maal hom sien. Toe dink ek is 'n donkie.
Ja, en wat dink jy nou?
Nou weet ek dat die quagga is daai, dat is die zebra.
Is dit nie 'n ongelooflike storie dat hierdie dier is nou weer terug op hierdie aarde?
Ja, dat is wonderlik hulle weer terug is.
Het die quaggas 'n boodskap vir Suid-Afrikaners?
Moenie hulle doodmaak nie. Verskerm hulle liewerste.
Wise words indeed. As for the quagga, they're thriving, all thanks to Reinhold Rau's vision. Does the rebreeding or revival of quagga afford us the opportunity to rectify our past mistakes? Even charismatic, well-known animals are fighting for the survival of their species. We happen to get lucky with the quagga. But what will it take for us to realize that extinction is forever?
This could be our last chance to see. She's searching for the truth.
Welcome back to Wild Limited, where we've seen the revival of the quagga species. Now we relocate to the Iziko, the South African Museum in Cape Town, where it all started. There are 23 known stuffed and mounted quagga in museums throughout the world. This animal was the first extinct creature to have its DNA studied. No such other rebreeding program exists. In spite of sophisticated genetic manipulation, extinction is still final. Quagga can only be rebred because they are a subspecies of the plain zebra. And it's still controversial whether looks alone are enough to declare the quagga a living species once more. Reinhold Rau saved bits of dried skin when he was busy mounting this quagga foal in 1969. He also saved some dried skin samplings from 2 other quaggas that he mounted at Mainz Museum in Germany. Collectively, the dried skin was sent to Berkeley University in California. The DNA analysis came back, saying that the quagga is simply a southern subspecies of the plain zebra and not a 4th species of zebra, as some scientists had thought. It's these almost identical DNA chains that allowed the rebreeding of a subspecies. There's no cloning or genetic manipulation. We asked the museum's Dr. Butch Hulley to explain further. Dr. Hulley, congratulations on a project that reached fruition and came to be. When Reinhold Rau came to you for the very first time in the 1970s, what was your thought initially on this harebrained scheme?
Well, it seemed pretty harebrained at that stage. Everybody believed that the quagga was a separate species, so trying to resurrect an extinct species was a no-go area. But Reinhold was very enthusiastic about it, and I don't know, for me anyway, as a research person, it was a chance to do something different. That interests me as a scientist. Scientists don't like to have kind of half-truths. They like truths all the time, if there's such a thing as the truth. And the Quagga program was, in a way, looking at what was the truth here. Was it a separate species? Was it the same species? Could we rebreed it out of an existing gene pool? I mean, there were all these things which examine the very essence of what makes science as exciting as it does.
And we can determine the loss of striping through a process called scoring. Through the scoring process, we're able to notice very clearly that the stripes are on the rump, but the coloration, the brown color, isn't coming back.
What we heard from the animal geneticists was that the striping we needed to address first. That brown coloration might in fact be something to do with diet. And so now we feel that we're well on the way there. Our next big hurdle is to get the brown color.
Dr. Hulley, some people watching this would say it's a bit Jurassic Park. What's your comment?
I suppose Jurassic Park means, in a way, breeding back something that is extinct in the case of the quagga, and that's not really true. What we're doing is just doing some selective breeding to get an end product, and that would be much like breeding thoroughbred racehorses to get speed or to get that kind of characteristics that you want. So it's a completely natural thing. So there's no genetic manipulation in the way Jurassic Park was to have happened.
The rebreeding efforts aren't done in isolation. It takes teamwork. In this case, the scientists, the museums, and the private landowners each play a role. And why such a fuss over the quagga? Extinction aside, the loss of a subspecies means we lose genetic diversity. So what does Professor Eric Hulley think of it all? From the project's inception to today, are you pleased with the progression and the rate at which it's happening?
Yes, we thought originally it would probably take about 4 generations of selective breeding for us to see whether we were going to succeed or not. I'm very happy with the way it's gone. In fact, it's gone as well as, or possibly even better than I could have predicted, because already by our 3rd generation, we have animals which if you take a photograph of them and you put it alongside some of the more striped museum quaggas, it's very hard to tell the difference. We are on the dark brown colouring yet, but we've virtually got there on the reduction of striping aspect of it.
And this is all breeding from the formation herd, which were the most quagga-looking animals. It's entirely natural, just visually selective.
Why should the average South African care about the fact the quagga is back?
I think they should care partly because this is a South African endeavour, which is nice, and nowhere else in the world is anything like this going on, but also because we have retrieved an animal which was shot out by the foolishness of the early people with guns who came across, and of course they shot out everything, didn't they? And the quagga went extinct, or disappeared, perhaps we should say, not extinct, before anybody really knew what was happening.
Saving the quagga was a close call, but many other species haven't been as lucky. Think of the dodo, tiger species, frog and butterflies.
The quagga was hunted out, literally to extinction. Do you think mankind has learnt since those early days?
No, I don't think mankind has learnt at all. I think this is an ongoing thing that I think we need to learn, and we need to learn very, very quickly about those animals that are threatened and those animals that are facing near extinction. Hundreds of species are disappearing every year, thousands every year, without us even knowing about it.
Tigers, for example, have a high public profile compared to the quagga, yet they're dying out. 3 of the 8 subspecies are already extinct. In spite of conservation efforts, it might be too little, too late. Back in Africa, with its home in Uganda, the shy okapi has nearly the reverse markings of the quagga. It's related to the giraffe rather than the horse family, but where it's similar is that the okapi also almost extinct. Perhaps it's time we thought about the consequences of our selfish actions on wildlife species more seriously. Young Henry's distinctly quagga looks are not to be taken lightly. No animal is, when just a few years ago, all that remained of the species were stuffed museum specimens. Were it not for the vision of Reinhold Rau, that's what they would have remained. Reinhold was much more than a quagga man. Apart from having over 50 scientific publications to his name, he had the passion to make people sit up and take note. South Africa's young natural science students should be ready to take the baton and continue work which is a national responsibility. We hold a world first in our hands. It's something most of us are completely oblivious to, yet it's changed the way of nature positively. So don't look for the soul of Reinhold amongst the dead. He's here on the plains of the Cape, kicking his heels and running with the quagga. Digital technology provided by Sony South Africa. Production vehicles supplied by Mitsubishi.
She's gonna find the answers. She's gonna tell the tale.